Let's get ready to grumble!
Right now we will hear from the father
Saizi tunaanza kusikia kwa baba
of Patrick,
babake na Patrick.
Peter Iola.
Mimi ni Peter Lioya.
I am Peter Lioya.
Baba yake ya Patrick Lioya.
I am the father of Patrick Lioya.
Patrick Lioya ni mtoto wangu wa kwanza.
Patrick Lioya is my firstborn son.
Alikuwa na miaka 26.
And he was 26 years old.
Kama mnaniona hapa,
the way you see me now,
sina mengi ya kuongea.
I don't have much to say.
Roho yangu inavunjika kabisa.
My heart is really deeply broken.
Lakini cha kunililisha kabisa kuona
what is making me cry more to see my son
ameuawa kabisa na askari polisi mkubwa.
He has been killed by a police officer.
Kwa kosa ndogo sana.
For a small mistake, fault.
Wakati nimeona video hii,
by the time when I saw this video,
roho yangu kabisa imevunjika.
My heart was really deeply broken.
Hapa naona kabisa ni maisha yangu, sina maisha.
Right now I'm seeing that I have no life. My life has come to their hand.
Maisha yangu ilikuwa tayari ni Patrick mtoto wangu.
My life was Patrick, my son.
And yes, folks, once again, we have another police killing of an unarmed African-American in what appears to be largely, I mean, a point-blank gun to the back of the head shot in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Patrick Lioya, who is a immigrant from the Congo, been in the States for about 5 years, is sitting there pulled over for what appears to be a routine traffic stop, only to have him obviously be confused. You could see confusion on his face. He's probably scared, typical of most of us when the police pull us over. But he's yelled at and screamed at, told, get in the car. And he does not follow instructions, whether it's because he doesn't understand or whatever. He starts things off in a way that is going to set the police, the jackbooted thugs they typically are, it's going to send them into a frenzy. He doesn't. The officer approaches him, tries to taser him, misses the first time. The guy swats it away and starts running. He tries to taser him again. He misses a second time. This time, the guy is running, grabs the taser from him, and the cop is basically screaming at him, let go of the taser, let go of the taser. Okay. Well, this cop, in his infinite wisdom, rather than maybe, I don't know, a punch or a move that they train you on to de-escalate without a gun, any of those type of things, no. This cat breaks out his service pistol, puts it to the back of the guy's head, and blows his brains out. Guy was unarmed. He has no idea, and he never will because he's dead, what he did to get pulled over. And then you listen to the Grand Rapids police chief talking about the incident, and everybody's hand wringing because they know the public isn't going to take this. 18% of the Grand Rapids community is African American. And of the 18%, they don't trust the police. This has been going on for years in that area, where they have had incident after incident after incident of unarmed African Americans violently treated by the police. Now, all of a sudden, police chief is talking about this will be part of our ongoing, we're going to fix this kind of thing. And someone in the audience, one of the journalists says, is this your George Floyd? And you could see the chief squirming. And once again, the chief, he ends up basically saying, I'm not going to make a comment on this. Well, I mean, that's not unfair. I mean, he hasn't reviewed it, etc. But it's pretty cut and dry because ultimately they're going to judge and assess whether or not the use of deadly lethal force was warranted in this case. Now, I want you to understand, when you look at the video, Leoya was laying face down on the ground. There was a police officer on his back. Now, is it fair to say that the officer, regardless of how poorly he handled up to that point, had a responsibility to somehow or another restrain this guy? Because letting him go at that point would probably be a bad move. Look, if you're going to have police at all, and I'm not sure to what degree police protect and serve. I really don't. I know that police have largely been protectors of capital in this country, protectors of private property, not protectors of the people. They're not trained to handle kids with autism. They're not trained to handle immigrants. They're not trained to handle people that don't have all their language skills or their hearing or whatever. I mean, they're not trained to handle a lot of these things, apparently. But this guy's go-to move was to break out his service revolver and bust a cap in the dude's brain. I mean, seriously, that is not protecting and serving, period. So what do we do? I mean, across the country, it takes a huge rally. It takes protests, people in the streets for days on end to get justice. And even then, it's not guaranteed. Even then, it always seems like we're having the same conversation over again, like we're talking past one another. How do we make it so that people don't have to be perfect to not die by cop? These are valid questions that need to be answered. And as you watch this video again, remember, everybody didn't wake up ready to rock and roll. Everybody didn't wake up prepared, tan, rested, and ready to deal with an interaction with a police officer that is breaking out weapons, period. I mean, think about you yourself right now. White, black, doesn't matter. Woman, man. And imagine waking up, getting in your automobile, driving down the road to go to whatever store, and all of a sudden you're pulled over by a police officer. You have no idea why you got pulled over by the police officer. You just know that you are pulled over by the police officer. Now what? Now what do you do? Now what do you do? Some would sit there scared to death and hold the steering wheel. But even then, they have to worry about if they make any quick moves, because we've seen unarmed people killed sitting in the driver's side of their car. We've seen people on the ground killed by knee or neck. We've seen children killed for having a toy gun. Ultimately, the police, if they're going to exist, must do better. But if you look, and this is probably the more terrifying aspect, more terrifying, if you will, more terrifying than the actual death of the individual, are the comments made by average people watching these videos and the evil that is coming from their mouths. And I'm not a big MAGA kind of thing, but every one of them, to a fault, every single one of them is basically MAGA. Is basically MAGA. What do you do with that? Do you lock up an entire half of the country to protect us from ourselves? People that are apologists for jackbooted thugs offing people? How do you do this? How do you deal with that? I mean, after a while, you begin to not even care what's happening. You just know the outcome. You just know the outcome. The white knight coming up there to Minnesota, out of state, bringing his gun, What happens to douchebag? He's a hero. He's exonerated. He cries white tears, and he's exonerated completely. This guy literally ran from a cop unarmed, didn't know what was going on, and these assholes are in the comment section literally cheering the cop on. It's one thing to say we got to reform the police, but it's another thing to realize that rank and file people, they don't give a shit. They're okay with this. In fact, they think that the black guy that got pulled over, the unarmed black guy that got pulled over, deserved to die. That's no joke. Next round. You know, there was just obviously a major shooting the other day in the New York City subway. Now, we can look at this a number of ways. Obviously, whenever you see a shooting like this, it brings to question, what are we dealing with here? Are we dealing with someone who simply is very disturbed and sad and been struck down with a lot of misery and austerity, etc.? Are we dealing with mental health? Could they both be combined? I don't know. Fact of the matter is that we've got a situation in this country where we have mental health issues across the board, and people don't have health care in this country, right? People don't have health care in this country. So it's no surprise that we not only on one hand have police officers that are untrained to deal with people who are non-neurotypical, who have other health problems, etc. Similarly to our first story here, with the death by cop. But now we're also dealing with on the reverse side of this, where we've got people actually taking the law in their own hands because they're fed up, they're sick of it. This guy, Frank James, who was the accused shooter or is the accused shooter, apparently killed or shot 10 passengers and at least 13 other people were injured in the attack. That's 23. It's quite a bit. They've tied some very interesting things together, from a van that was rented in Philadelphia, him having dual addresses in Wisconsin and New York, and simultaneously his YouTube channel, which showed strange videos, things like just the spot, basically, just filming the streetcars. Who knows why, right? But also, a year prior, he had purchased a lot of the fireworks and stuff, apparently it appears, from Wisconsin, pretty much a whole year prior to this event. This guy clearly had had enough racism, clearly was on the verge of blowing up. And the question you have to ask yourself, is it insane for someone who's experienced insane amounts of racism and who has seen people gunned down? Is it really that weird and strange that suddenly you would see them take law into their own hands when you see every Tom, Dick, and Harry making an excuse for the racism and the violence and the death and the killing of unarmed black people? I don't believe you can. And the fact of the matter is that we've got a situation here in this particular case where a lot of people were shot. Do you see a tie-in here? Maybe not. But it's quite clear that anecdotally, we can see a pattern. People lose faith in law enforcement. They lose faith in a country that will not prioritize taking care of everyone, not just white people, not just moneyed interest, not just the people that ultimately are look like you and I, let's say, the people in power, but everyone. And now all of a sudden, we have somebody who finally snaps. And let's be fair, we've got austerity out the wazoo. We've got people, the bottom, not the rich, because the rich are doing just right during this time period. All the inflation, etc., that's going right into their wallets. But the average person really dealing with a lot of pain and suffering right now, a lot of misery, lack of health care, you name it. And so as the haves separate from the have-nots, should we expect to see more of these types of things? Should we expect to see the second coming of Joker? Is this a real possibility even? Vigilantes, people who have lost it, who literally start casing out places to make an impact, to say, fuck you, I'm done. Killing is never right. Obviously, never right. Should never be the answer. But given the fact that conditions that we're under are so intense, so stressful, so absolutely bleak, is it really any wonder that people start snapping? So the question is, do you fund the police more, get more police, or do you invest in some simple IT technology with cameras and stuff like that and really make the subway, but then you have your privacy people say, hey, we don't want more cameras around. And you got the people that don't want to see more killing say, hey, wouldn't it be better if we could see what's going on so that we can maybe prevent some of this stuff from happening? It's always going to be a push-pull between privacy concerns and safety concerns. Which one will win? You have to take some risk to step foot out of your own house. You got to take some risk to wake up in the morning. But the reality is that we have people in this country who are not well, who do not have health care. And even if they do have health care, are they getting the right health care? Do they have the ability to see a doctor, to get their mental health taken care of? One can make the case that we don't have that. We have death care in this country. We have everything is after the fact. All the laws, all the rules are written for people who are leading their best life. They're not written with an understanding of what the regular person goes through. To put the, exclamation point on mental health, let's hear from Frank James himself. Unfortunately, we don't have video because it was taken down. But I'll read to you the quote that it was left in a Democracy Now! Article. Frank James says, I'm heading back into the danger zone, so to speak, and it's triggering a lot of negative thoughts. Of course, because I do have a bad, severe case of post-traumatic stress and the shit I've been through for freaking years, man. And that's the end of the quote. That sounds like a person under extreme duress. Now, what's interesting is the response of Mayor Eric Adams. And I want you to hear this because this tells you exactly how the government and everyone else in charge sees mental health. First of all, being angry does not give you the right to enter our subway system, discharge 33 rounds, striking 10 people, injuring 16 because of your actions. You don't have that right, and I'm not going to succumb to any person who believes they can attempt to harm New Yorkers because they're angry. The failure of those with mental health homelessness, the failure of our educational system did not start January 2022. We have abandoned and betrayed New Yorkers for years. That betrayal is going to stop, and I'm committed to doing so.
I think you're a loser.
What exactly is the mechanism that people who have mental health issues, who are literally, the synapses in their brain are freaking fucked up because they've been fucked up, whether it be from our wars that we send these veterans out to come back home and be completely reintegrated into society, fully broken without any kind of support. Is that really what we're up against? Yes, unfortunately it is. But this guy's saying, hey, I'm going to protect everyone else. Hey, it hasn't been fucked up overnight, so it's no excuses. Bullshit. It may be no excuse. It may still be a crime, but stop putting this under the fucking covers and killing it. This is the story. Next round. All right, so as we've already shown you, what we have is a situation where we've got police that do not sit there and protect and serve, they kill. We have shown that people who have no health care and are mentally ill kill. Now we've understand that people who have these illnesses have nowhere to go because even in New York City, There's literally the shittiest mental health system ever. Like, it's horrible. Like the old videos of Willowbrook with people chained to their beds. Awful, awful, awful. Now you just have to hopefully hope someone has the wits about them to check themselves in, because otherwise somebody is going to have to hurt somebody to get seen. Hello? We've got to have better solutions than this, folks. And it starts with having a national healthcare system that exceeds single payer healthcare, because it's really not about the payment. The federal fucking government can pay for it. It's really not about bankrupting states who, by the way, are currency users. States which, by the way, have massive, massive, massive amounts of unfunded mandates handed down by the federal government. States that will go bankrupt if you put more strain on them. States that are already struggling with unfunded pensions, school systems that are unfunded, that are poorly funded, that have shitty equipment, that have teachers that are underpaid, kids that are living hand to mouth, poverty everywhere. And yet, we can't get health care in this country. We've got folks who don't understand economics, who don't understand the implications of pushing states to cover these massively important things. Taking away energy from national efforts and putting them at the state level. Now, wonder why that's a problem. Well, states are currency users. In other words, they are heavily reliant on tax dollars. And what happens when you tax in states? Folks like Bezos take their Amazons and vanish. All the other, look at what happened in Kansas with Sam Brownback. He literally slashed the entire tax base to lure business into Kansas. Look at Texas, where they have the social services slashed and they're inviting more and more business. It's great to be great if everything's great, but if it ain't so great, it's a fucking hellscape. And the divide between the haves and the have-nots is astounding. So as you look and you try to put Band-Aids on heart attacks, instead of addressing the real root cause problems, instead of attacking things in piecemeal, you must look at this systematically. Forget that we have a climate crisis going on right now that is going to make a lot of this stuff seem a little less relevant, or maybe it'll be even more relevant. As Arctic ice starts unleashing old viruses from the permafrost, as we watch tides rise and we watch new algae blooms and we watch more shark attacks and we watch coastal communities vanish, there may be even more need for healthcare, huh? So why, when you bundle all this together, don't we have the most robust healthcare? Because after all, we've got the money to fund the fucking police, but we don't have the money to provide the healthcare. Why is that? Why is that? Let me tell you something. This is where MMT comes in. Hello. Steve's going to talk MMT. Yes, I'm going to talk MMT.
Don't call it a comeback.
Why is that? Because we have 5 or 6 big problems going on all at once. We've got an inflation problem. Well, we don't really have an inflation problem. We have a monopoly gouging problem. We've got Amazon, who is putting a 5% inflation and fuel charge on all of your purchases through Amazon. One more reason to boycott Amazon if you're able. The other issue is that we've got fuel going through the roof. Why? Well, it certainly isn't because of a lack of it, because we export more fuel out of this country than you will ever know. And we barely import any from Russia to begin with. I think it was at 3% that we actually import from Russia. So why is the price so damn high? It's gouging once again. So all these prices are going up. The money's coming from somewhere and it's going somewhere, right? Amazon had the biggest, a huge increase in their bottom line. Their profit went up something 22% from year 2020 to 2021. Many billions, $35 billion in profit. But they're going to raise the cost to pay for inflation and fuel? Really? I'm dead serious. So as you think about all this, and you think about deifying the rich, and you think about how states are funded, and you realize states are funded based on tax revenues. And yet states are single-handedly carrying more burden than you will ever know because of unfunded mandates handed down from the federal government, which, by the way, is the currency issuer. So we've got monopoly power crushing us with inflation, gouging, price setting at the wrong way, capitalist at its finest, right? Capitalism all the way. And then simultaneously, you got those same rich companies lobbying Congress to prevent them from spending on we the people. Preventing, once again, health care, because if you remember, Joe Biden said he would not pass Medicare because Joe Biden is still trying to maintain Obama and his legacy through the ACA, which is an abject neoliberal failure. It did not stop this issue in New York City subway. It didn't stop that at all. People are not able to go just randomly and get help. People don't have the money to get help. But Bezos, who made $35 billion, that's a B, billion in profits last year, the world's second richest man behind Elon Musk, who is now making a hostile bid for Twitter, $52.40 some cents a share he offered him after it tanked down to the 30s. He's got no confidence in their management. But think about the money that these blokes have, that they have been sucking out from investment capital and from underpaying employees. These parasites have been sucking the life out of us, and they're also simultaneously part of the machine that stands in the way of the solutions. They don't want these solutions because these solutions take money out of their pocket. They just want to make it go away. They just want you in jail, dead, whatever. But yet, here's this inflation bug. This inflation bug, and what is Biden saying? Biden's calling it Putin's inflation. Biden is calling it Putin's inflation because of the fuel. But we only get 3% from there, and we make it ourselves. Remember all the bullshit the Democrats gave us when they said that they were going to be fracking to increase gas in this country? Remember that? Well, think about that for a minute, because we have no national energy policy. So the ability to pay for energy is still left in the private sector's hands to decide what it wants to do with it. The federal government could nationalize fuel production now. It could literally take it over. It could then, in turn, make sure that we had the right amount of fuel available for purchase in this country. It could ensure prices stay low. It could do whatever it needs to do. But it's not. Why is that? Because of this adherence to the free market. But free to who? If you have money, wouldn't you want to get health care? Wouldn't you want to have mental health care? Wouldn't you want to ensure that you have food? Wouldn't you want to ensure that you've got a roof over your head? Wouldn't you want to ensure that the basics in life are taken care of for you and your family? All this while, student debt once again gets punched out to August. Now, Biden lying about it being Putin's inflation, notwithstanding, there's a lot of yucks out there that suckle onto the mainstream media.
I'll cradle the balls, stroke the shaft, work the pipe, and swallow the gravy.
That don't realize that regardless of your feelings about Putin, no matter how tainted you've been, because Putin is yet again a disgusting, shitty oligarch. Yes, agreed. Doesn't change the fact that Biden is abdicating his responsibility, that he could use the powers of the emergency brought on by the pandemic to bring costs in line. He could use emergency procedures. He could write off that student debt, as we've talked about before. He could do a number of things. But instead, Wall Street is living large and in charge. Stocks are through the roof. Through the roof. And yet inflation is at a 40-year high. A 40-year high. And it is definitely not a demand issue. It is definitely not a cost increase issue. If it was, there wouldn't be record profits. Period. There's no way around it. There would not be record profits. So how does that happen? Folks, you're being lied to. We're being lied to. To wrap it up, we got police killing unarmed people who are confused and scared and running. We've got people who have been traumatized by the shitty system gunning down people in a subway, who are out there in public on YouTube saying, I am nuts, I'm out of my mind, I'm getting triggered, do something, help me, I don't know what to do, I'm in a dark place. Nothing, crickets. There's no profit there. And he didn't check himself in, and there's no rule to say one way or the other. So guess what? Homeboy Bonanza goes on a shooting spree. And now all of a sudden, mayors want to talk about how there's no excuse for that. Not that I have to tell you how fucked up this is, but when you understand that the federal government is the creator of the US dollar, take your Rothschild shit and go fucking bounce, okay? This Rothschild shit's got to go because it's blocking your ability to hear. Maybe that's part of the need for mental health. Maybe that's part of the need for mental health, is this obscure, weird, esoteric garbage about the Rothschilds, okay? We need to focus on the federal government and recognize it can do every bit of this. There's nothing there that it can't do. It can work on climate change. It can work on student debt. It can get us mental health, and it can give us a national health service instead of this piecemeal garbage that keeps leading to guns and people dying and shooting the fuck out of each other. This is unnecessary. And it is there because we've got bootlickers on the right that are sitting there suckling at the teat of fucking bigotry and hatred, because after all, they should have known better. And with that, I'm Steve Grumbine to tell you the federal government is important to step in now. We've got to do something different now. Now. Not later, now, before more people die. I don't need to see another protest. I don't need to see more people in the street for months on end only to go after one person and nothing change. We need change now. I'm out of here. And still